Real estate is a passion of mine, so, if something goes sideways, you have to really temper your emotions, It's not easy always, especially when you're getting yelled at from somebody on the other line who doesn't see it exactly the same way you do. And calmer heads prevail. I've always learned that in any advice in life. Any situation, let cooler heads prevail.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast, where we dive deep with the best in business to uncover what really drives success in real estate. Today's episode is for anyone who wants to understand what it takes to dominate in one of the most competitive and prestigious real estate markets in the country. You're about to learn how to build trust with luxury buyers, how to consistently stay top 1% of agents over decades, and what truly means to serve clients at the highest level, from oceanfront estates to executive relocations. You're also here with calm confidence, deep market knowledge, and elite level service really look like from someone who's not just been in the game, but he's helped shape it. This former pro tennis writer and rankings coordinator made a powerful career pivot nearly 3 decades ago and has been quietly outperforming some of Florida's biggest names in luxury real estate ever since. Stay tuned, because you're about to meet the one and only Michael Curet. How are you doing, Michael?
Tracy, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
Good to be here.
Coming down on this, Thursday morning here. We got Halloween tomorrow to date ourselves. It's October 30th.
You're dressing up?
No, I actually have a football game tomorrow night. I am refereeing the Pedro Menendez game, where most counties have moved their games to Thursday nights. This was one of the few games that was left on Friday night. So I'll be up there. Yeah. I always get stuck at home anyway, handing out the candy, and I hate doing that because my wife and my kids are running around the neighborhood, seeing everybody and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
the days when my boys were young, we enjoyed it a lot and did all the Ponte Vedra neighborhoods and more recent, it's, we're all getting older. So our cul-de-sac is average age, I wouldn't even want to guess. But sometimes we have a couple of stragglers, but oftentimes nobody shows up.
Right.
So,
you got to put a sign at the end of the street, say, hey, we're here.
It's kind of, Ponte Vedra Halloween trick-or-treating is sort of a unique thing. It's everybody piles in the golf carts and goes to a particular neighborhood. It's not like every neighborhood gets the business, So it's kind of like been evolved over the years, But it's fun.
No, it certainly is that way. To ride around on the golf carts, and then they can dump their bags and then come back out. They do all sorts of things. I want to kick off a little bit. Might give everyone a little background on you, and obviously, you had a really unique career prior to getting into real estate. Tell us about how you got into the tennis industry and into writing, and obviously you were able to, I'm sure, meet a lot of really interesting and famous people in tennis.
Yeah, it was fabulous. So I went to school at the University of Louisiana in Lafayette, Louisiana. I had a journalism scholarship. My father was a journalist. I love sports, so I naturally sort of migrated into writing about sports. Did it all throughout college, covered all the local teams, all the college teams at the school, all the different sports, and then was looking for a job. A friend of mine, who I also went to college with in Louisiana, had a job he took right out of college for the Association of Tennis Professionals, which is the men's professional tennis tour. And at the time, it was located in Dallas, Arlington, Texas. And I said, sounds great. So I was hired, handled the rankings, input of just data every week after the tournaments were played. Very entry-level type of position. Next thing you know, they saw my writing skills and said, we have a player newsletter, magazine. We're going to have you cover some tennis tournaments. I said, fantastic. About a year into it, they decided we're going to locate our home of professional tennis. We're looking all over the country, but we've sort of earmarked a place. Have you ever heard of Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida? I said, no, I haven't. He said, well, it's the home of the PGA Tour. I said, fantastic. I love golf, too. So next thing you know, we come in for a visit. They're building this beautiful facility. and the North American headquarters of the ATP Tour, which of course is boomed now. These days they have offices in London, Monte Carlo, Australia, and a small office it used to be Ponte Vedra Beach, now it's Atlantic Beach, Florida, but they moved it recently. But it was a great experience. I only did that for about 4 years. I got to cover, some of the great tournaments. Travel was amazing. Went to Wimbledon, went to Paris, French Open, U.S. Open several times, and a lot of American tournaments. It was a great, great experience. Still have a lot of wonderful relationships with those people. A lot of them ended up settling here. A lot of tennis pros didn't necessarily settle here, which I think was the goal. But their weeks are like 38 to 40 weeks on the road a year. So right. The last thing they want to do when they're not playing is come here and practice. So, But it was a great, Northeast Florida hub for a number of years, and it still is, to fly out of here.
Just curiosity, because a lot of the pro golfers live in Florida.
You do, and you have a few
even the international ones, even the ones from Europe. And so forth.
You do. You have a lot of them, and even the great young Swedish player Aberg now has bought a house in Ponte Vedra. For the longest time, Vijay Singh was here, David Duval was here, Jim Furyk is still here. You have a lot of that, and I've had some relationship. Lynn Matisse, good friend of mine who almost won the Masters, is still here. So he was actually the only real local boy that made it good. I mean, he was a Ponte Vedra kid that went to Nice and became a golfer, and it escalated from there.
I think you have a perspective though on this. Someone who's not from here. Obviously, you moved here because the office moved here, right? That's what brought you here.
That's right.
But someone who doesn't live here, who is, playing golf or tennis at a high level. Obviously, we do have the TPC and the tournament every year here. But for tennis, it's not like we have a tennis stadium where there's some big competition going on here. Why would a tennis player playing at the pro level be attracted to Ponte Vedra?
Well, they're attracted to Florida in general, just like the golfers.
Right.
So many great golf courses, the climate, the ability to practice, the ability to we were hoping that the executive offices would allow people to come here, and they had for the younger players something called ATP Tour University, where they would train them on how to manage your money, how to manage your schedule, so that stuff was helpful, and they did a lot of meetings here, the tournament directors from around the country, and you did get a few guys that stayed here. You had guys that came in and practiced for a couple of months at a time. I remember Pete Sampras came in, and we all went to lunch together, and I said, oh my God, this guy just won the U.S. Open.
Right.
I'm having lunch with Pete Sampras.
Yeah.
But you had guys like Todd Martin, who's been to a couple of major finals and was at one point director of the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Via Washington, who has a huge foundation here for kids. He got to the final at Wimbledon. He had a nice career as an American player. You've had a few guys that have settled in here, but not many.
Right.
Most of them have places abroad and other places in other parts of Florida where they have trained maybe over the years. So.
Well, the high-profile people Pete Sampras probably would be recognized. Most people who have anything to do with tennis or watching sports would probably recognize him and say, ooh, is that Pete Sampras? That guy looks familiar.
He doesn't get out much. I mean,
right.
he keeps a low profile these days.
But as far as the area of Ponte Vedra, because it isn't, a big tennis tournament type of area, they can be low profile and go out to the grocery store without being mobbed. Is that kind of it's very nice. It can be luxurious. They can get their climate, but also they're not, or seeing Trevor Lawrence walk down the street. Obviously, everybody would be running up to him for an autograph.
Right.
But some of these guys just want to go out to dinner without being bothered, right?
Yeah. I mean, most of them aren't 6'7" and have long hair. But there are some tall tennis players that, the power game is developed over the years. You've got a guy like John Isner, who's 6'11", who retired recently, big serve. But you'd be amazed. Golf is just internationally known, television-wise. It is on a lot more than professional tennis in the United States anyway.
Yeah. In
Europe, tennis is on everywhere, but as well as soccer and golf. But, the interesting thing in May, after the retirement of Rafa Nadal, Nadal retired and was given a special ceremony at Roland Garros in Paris at the French Open this year in May. It's rumored that he's playing golf in Ponte Vedra. And I happened to run in, for a Starbucks at the Marriott in Vedra, and who's getting off the van from around the golf but Rafa Nadal. So we had a nice exchange, a photo moment, all that stuff. And Nadal played long after my time with the ATP. But what a nice guy.
Yeah.
And he was not mobbed by people. There were a few people walking around. I don't think tennis is as internationally known and recognizable, these players. I mean, a few people may say, oh, that's Roger Federer, that's Rafa Nadal.
Right.
That's John McEnroe. It's not as big in the United States as it is as golf.
I believe, and I know we were going way off on tennis here a little bit, but obviously,
favorite topic, by the way.
I think to me, my favorite time when I was growing up, obviously was McEnroe, Connors, Borg,
Lindell,
those guys. Yeah.
Great moment. Yeah, those guys are still around as far as spokesmen of the game.
Right.
But so anyway, So the nice thing about this is it enabled me to make some relationships when I did decide to go into real estate. Immediately, I had some relationships with the PGA Tour from being here, with the ATP, of course, as being a former employee. And I worked for Prudential Network Realty, Linda Shear, a wonderful lady who founded that company. Now it's Berkshire Hathaway. It's grown like it's just blown up.
Yeah.
Worked there for almost 15 years, and they had the Jacksonville Jaguars account. Tom Petway was part of the committee or ownership group that got the Jaguars here, with Wayne Weaver, of course. And Tom Petway was also an integral part of Prudential Network Realty. So they had that account. What that meant for me as a young guy who had not been in real estate, every spring, a flood of new players would come in. Some of them would rent, some of them would buy. And I got a phone call, probably my first year in real estate, just green as can be, still kind of learning my way. And they said, wait, we want you to take these guys out for an afternoon, and they've just signed with the Jaguars and not sure what they're going to do. Don't pressure them to buy. They have agents. I got to learn, dealing with agents was an interesting thing as well, but that's a topic for another day. And they said, a guy by the name of Fred Taylor, and I said, sure, I'll take him out. You ended up getting Fred. We remain, acquaintances today. I see him every year. We talk at the games and stuff. He's a great guy. But anyway, put him in his first apartment not far from here, over there off the south side, and a brand new apartment complex, gated. He said, if I like it here, and he did. Of course, he had a great career here. He said, we're going to buy something next year. So ended up working with him on 2 houses, and he was a great, great customer over the years. And it was great to see him sort of settle into the Jacksonville area and contribute what he has, and he still does. Right. So I got to work with a number of those guys, and it's now the Jaguar relationship is different. Berkshire no longer has it as exclusive. They sort of spread around to different realtors around town. I still occasionally will work with a member of the Jaguars.
Yeah.
And did this spring, as a matter of fact. But so, it's great. And that's not getting into any of the, how did I ascend eventually to Ponte Vedra and the luxury real estate or anything. But as far as early in my career, it was sort of cutthroat. Everybody was out there with a lot more experience than me. I had to learn as I went. The good thing is those relationships. Without those relationships in the early going, it would have been a struggle, and it was at times. But I would rather. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing.
How important? Like you said, you had the relationships with tennis, and obviously you're stretching over a little bit of PGA, and people started to know you around, Ponte Vedra. You go into real estate. How important was your credibility in your previous career to help you? The people were going, hey, if Mike's doing that now, he's a solid guy. He knows what he's doing. He's going to treat you right. Because, there's a lot of, especially the agents, well, I wouldn't say especially, I think there's agents that come in and even their friends and family don't want to refer them. I'm going to say, let's see if they stick with it, right?
Right.
How important was that credibility going from one industry to the another?
That was huge. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously if the company that's assigning the realtors, to the Jaguars, I mean, they have some instant credibility there. We have a relationship with this company, so whoever I get is going to be good is probably what they're thinking. It didn't always work out that way, but so yeah, the fact that the Jaguars had a relationship and were using us was huge. But actually, sort of with the situations that were not that way, just earning the respect of the customer is big. And, and a lot of the times when working with some of those athletes, as I worked with a bunch, we had a lot of things in common. I came from a sports background. We could talk about, oh, yeah, you came from Penn State. Oh, I worked with this gentleman. Oh, how about this guy? Oh, how's it look? You guys had a great year last year. So there was talking points, comfort. Honestly, and this is taking nothing away from the industry itself, but they were not a lot of men in 1997 when I first got licensed in real estate in Northeast Florida. It was dominated by the ladies, and learned a lot from some great women in real estate, obviously, over the years. But, so there were some of those guys that felt more comfortable riding around with a guy that was going to sort of, talk shop with them.
Right.
And,
well, there's the professional athletes, and especially obviously if they get to the point of playing professional football, as in tennis, it's just obviously not as many, but their network, they know people, they've been to all these all-star games, they've hooked up with all these different people, they've been to places, so-and-so's agent knows so-and-so, and they somehow meet and know each other, or know somebody that knows. They're very close proximity in the level of people that you were working with. So, yeah.
It's sort of a unique fraternity. I mean, I go to one of Tom Coughlin's events every year. He has a wine gala one of my causes is raising money for children with cancer. So he's got a great J-Fund organization, and we love a lot of his events and the things that he does. And that gathering place, you see a lot of those old faces. You see a lot of the people I've worked with over the years. You see a lot of the former Jaguars. You see a lot of PGA Tour professionals, a lot of the local athletes, because it's sort of a sports-themed type event, but it's grown over the years. But yeah, so, just like anybody, I mean, I happen to come in with some sports background. But anybody getting into real estate that's successful, they have their niche. I mean, they have their right buttons that they're pushing, and they know how to, work the relationships, and they all come. I mean, it might be from a design background, or it might be from a business financial background, but they all have their connections. I just happen to have a few that sort of launched me and jump-started me in sports-related, industry.
Right.
So
let's talk shop a little bit for the listeners out there, the agents that, as we promised them here at the beginning of the show, how do you get into the luxury market, and then how do you stay in the luxury market? Because your reputation is your currency, right?
Yes.
Yeah, in that area. So just because you got a couple deals doesn't mean you're going to stay there. You have to deliver in a level of service that obviously they're going to recommend you to another athlete or another just high influential or high economic individual. So tell us some of the things how you developed over time. Obviously you're going from writing to sales. And just what was some of the challenges that you had, and what were some of the things that just came natural to you that you felt that really, helped you accelerate your career?
It's interesting. It's definitely difficult, to get into the luxury coastal oceanfront and intercoastal waterfront market. I mean, it's dominated. It has been for years and years, and it goes through cycles by, a fairly short list of really accomplished realtors that have gained trust and experience over the years by doing it for so long. And that's kind of how I got into it. A lot of it is breaks. I mean, you'll hear stories about Hollywood actors or songwriters or singers that get the one break.
Right.
They may be great at what they do, but they have one person that gives
song.
them a break. So that kind of happened with me a little bit on the oceanfront. I seem to remember several years ago there was a two lots side by side on Ponte Vedra Boulevard that just had been sitting there, for years. It was kind of a down market. People were hurt. And it might have been in the 09, 10, 11 market, or even the next cycle of correction markets. I can't remember right now, but anyway, they were just sitting there. I would notice these for sale by owner signs with grass grown over them, for years and years. I finally, was able to connect with the owner, who was a doctor in Georgia, and we hit it off. We had some rapport, and I said, listen, I know I can help you with these. And I sent him some information. We continued to engage in conversation. And as we build a rapport, he felt comfortable with me, I felt comfortable with him. And sooner or later, I get those listings, those sell. And of course, when you're picking up leads during a sale, you're going to get other clients that come in and call you and say, I'm looking for Oceanfront. Can you help me? next thing you know, it's a snowball effect. And that's how it happened with me several years ago. And I've been able to maintain my consistency. Every year a good, successful real estate agent says, okay, I had a great year. I got to do it again. So that helped me. And that was land, So I've sold more lots on the ocean, I think. Somebody told me that did some studies with MLS, and maybe I've sold more vacant land in the last 8 or 10 years than maybe anybody in Northeast Florida. I don't know if that's actual, 100% factual today as I sit here, but I sold a lot.
I got two questions off that. One, you're building rapport with the doctor who owned those lots. He's up in Georgia somewhere. Share a little bit with the agents who might be listening right now. What did that take? I'm just imagining there was time and phone calls, but you said you built the rapport, and I mean, when did you actually did you ever meet him face to face?
Honestly, I never did.
Right. So,
and I think that's common in real estate these days.
Yeah.
With a lot of these, especially investors that buy a lot of property or second homeowners, you have a lot of the snowbirds, right? That are coming down. Hopefully in November we'll see some more snowbirds. But anyway, it's you have great discussions over the phone. Sometimes you never meet the customer, and you feel like you know them, and when you do finally meet him, it's like, wow, I feel like we know each other. Why is it taking so long for us to meet? But opportunity just doesn't always present itself. So
kind of walk us through what you can remember, because it was over a decade ago, it seems, but you built rapport. I imagine you were you calling him weekly or calling him every couple of weeks?
No, most honestly, customers are all different. You have one that wants to micromanage and wants a phone call or will check in with you almost daily.
Well, I'm talking about when you built the rapport.
Right, with that particular customer.
Yeah.
He just, gave me the keys and let me run with it, and he checked in from time to time. If I had a question I needed to talk to him about of an interested party or whatever, and kind of take his temperature on how he was feeling about this price and that sort of thing, we would talk. If there was a question about a survey or anything regarding the terrain, have you ever had any problems? Have you, that sort of thing. With Oceanfront, you always have issues you have to
So from the time you first called him, eventually the grass is growing over the signs, and you eventually said, hey, I'm just going to call this guy and see what's going on.
Right.
To the time he actually said, hey, man, put your sign up there and you take it over and sell these for me. Was that several months?
Probably weeks. Weeks. Sometimes it could be over 6 months. I mean, honestly. And they like the persistence, They like the persistence. But usually I throw some pretty good ammo at them, so to speak, as far as sales, this sold down the street at this price. I think it might be a good time to go ahead and list, that sort of thing. And most of those folks listen, and you capture a few of them and some you don't. Some of them still think they can do it better than anybody else. Now that, is eventually transitioned into other homeowners that wanted me to list their homes on the ocean. And that's a really tough market to get into.
Well, so
you have some great agents that have a background in interior design.
Right.
They've sold a lot of these on their resume already. Getting those high-end listings initially, all you have to do is get a few. It's just like a hit song. Have a couple of hits, and they keep coming. So I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed. I feel like I've really sort of planted my foothold over time. I've been doing this 27 years.
Yeah. Give us a little insight on selling a lot on the ocean. What are the things that a buyer who obviously plans to build a house on it, what are the things that they need to consider? And as a real estate agent, what are the things that you should be very knowledgeable of when trying to sell it?
It's really a lot of things. And I come from a background, my grandfather owned a lot of land, where I grew up. So I was always interested in land, These are small pieces of land, obviously, but we work with larger parcels. But the land thing always interested me. And on the ocean, over time, it took a while to really learn this stuff. But over time, you become comfortable with what's the elevation. Really important when building a house. Where's the coastal construction line? The coastal construction line sometimes runs right through the house, right through the road, and you have to go to DEP on any oceanfront build anyway, and you've got to get permission to build anything. What can you do seaward of the coastal or eastward of the coastal construction line. So,
Right.
so those type of things. You know, a few years ago, I discovered what a gopher tortoise was and why they settle in these lots on the ocean.
Right.
A huge thing. You can't just zap them and eliminate them or shoot them or whatever. I mean, or bury you have to remove those tortoises in
Right.
those nests and replace them. You know, it's almost like mitigation of land. You know, if you want to do something on a piece of wetlands, you've got to mitigate in another place with another parcel. I mean, there's a lot of things to know, but
Right.
the gopher tortoises are a big problem on the. I shouldn't say they're a problem. I mean, but they're an endangered species. Obviously, they're a protected species. You know, it's no different than the sea turtles. You know, you have to be very careful on the beach of those sea turtle nests and how much light you have shining at your house. I mean, there are a lot of things, a lot of rules people don't know about, but it's interesting.
Do you hire somebody out there
Yes.
that does this evaluation?
There's
on
coastal consultants. I've got a relationship with several really, really great people. Some that used to work for DEP that have great experience dealing with issues on the coast. And it's all about making your customer comfortable to move forward. This is all done in, say, like an inspection period, a due diligence period.
Right.
You know, if they want the property, they write the offer, they have a due diligence period, some are longer than others, and they get all these things addressed. You know, it's in Ponte Vedra and South Ponte Vedra, parts of it, you're in pretty good shape because you have good elevations. When you get down to Volano and other parts, as you saw during the storms, like Matthew and Irma, you've got some pretty rough lots down there that you wouldn't necessarily want to sell to a customer. So there's a lot of issues like that that you have to deal with.
So if you're the listing agent, you want to do some due diligence, obviously, so you can hopefully market that lot as, hey, this has got great elevation. There's no turtles to worry
Right.
about. Those are important things that you need to dig in when you're a listing agent.
Absolutely. And then, you know, the government actually did a restoration to the coastline all over the state. That comes into play. Does the customer have a bulkheaded lot, or do they need to bulkhead that lot?
Right.
Because when you have a nor'easter or a storm, that sand is going to erode, and you're going to have issues always in Florida, things that you need to be aware of. But, you know, I've got a listing right now on the ocean, a beautiful home. That's a 30-foot elevation. And I say with complete confidence, knowing, having worked with the coastal consultants over the year and looked at some of the maps of the elevations, it's one of the highest elevations in Ponte Vedra Beach,
Right.
in Northeast Florida.
Right.
So that is a huge selling point when you have a guy from California or New York that comes in and wants to look. They don't want to deal with any flooding problems, you know, or, you know, they want the highest lot that they can find that they can build a house on.
Yeah. No, I think the importance here for the listeners is, yeah, great to have a coastal lot listing, but if you're not knowledgeable on all the different things that someone has to go through just before they even think about building on it, then there's a lot of due diligence as a listing agent and also as the buyer's agent that you need to obviously educate your sellers and buyers on in either presenting that or buying that. Well, hey, what is it going to take to build? Just because it's a lot doesn't mean they can build what they want on it.
Right. And
You
it's
know?
it's okay not to be knowledgeable, but as long as you have the subs or the contractors in place that you know can answer questions.
Starting with one of these consultants that we're
Right,
talking about.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's okay, you know, to admit, hey, it's just like I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer, you know. I have, you know, some background in law within my family, you know, but I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer. I'm going to refer them to an attorney to talk to,
Right.
just as I would a coastal consultant.
In the luxury market, you know, and obviously being in the business for almost 28 years now, do clients also look at you and look at your, you know, your record, but just kind of assume that you might have a Rolodex of possible buyers? Because sometimes you get price
People
points.
still have Rolodexes?
Yeah, well, I'm using the analogy of that. Some people
kidding.
might not. Some of these listeners may not know what a Rolodex is because they've never seen one. But that when you get to that level of, you know, if you're selling a multi-million-dollar home, there's only a very select percentage of people that are going to buy that home, let alone in that area, and that people are calling you because they often figure that you probably have two or three or a handful of people that are looking, because they don't make those decisions overnight. They might have been looking for 6 or 8 a year or more for the perfect property, and they're hoping their property is, and you know somebody that wants. You're going to make that connection pretty quickly.
Right.
Is that something that really differentiates a true luxury price point agent to someone who wants to be.
It does, yeah. I mean, and obviously with the internet and websites, and a lot of the luxury agents have these wonderful websites and different avenues where people can find them, and they can find oceanfront property, and names pop up, So I'm sure that a lot of my colleagues in the industry get a lot of leads that way, as I do on occasion. But the other thing is, I mean, I work for a fantastic company. I made that call 15 years into it after working at Prudential / Berkshire.
Yeah.
I made a call to a guy named Scott Williams, who was a broker at the time. He's deceased now. He gave me the opportunity. One of the older agents who had done a lot of stuff on the ocean was sort of getting out of the business, and he said, "We do have a spot for you." And I walked right in a 5-minute hallway discussion had a new home, and it was Ponte Vedra Club Realty. I've been there for almost 15 years now, so another almost 15 years, 14 I think, so going into my 29th coming up. But and anyway, that is unique because, Tracy, we have probably the only brokerage firm that's located in a resort in Northeast Florida, and a resort that's been there for 100 years. And it's very exciting because they're going through a major renovation now. It's going to be just 5-star quality, the 2 golf courses, tennis, the spa, everything, you name it, and the hotel. And we have not only our office, but we also have a branch office inside the hotel. So as far as walk-in traffic and those potential buyers with deep pockets, they come in and they walk around this beautiful old hotel and resort, and they eventually find our office. I love it here. Maybe I'll look at Ponte Vedra as a possibility.
Right.
And I don't think any other brokerage firm can say that around here. So, extremely fortunate to be where I am. I don't think I'll never work anywhere else.
Talk about
if
that.
I have a say-so about it.
What was said in that hallway that sold you? Your needs and wants for you at that moment in time, almost 15 years ago, versus needs and wants of the agents today from one day. What was it that they were providing you felt you needed, or maybe you didn't even realize you needed it until they suggested this, this is what we're doing? What was it that clicked right there at that moment?
I mean, I kind of, I've always held the Ponte Vedra Club in a very high regard. Obviously, the Peyton family, Gate, what they've done with it and what it means to the community. If you've ever visited there, it's fabulous. It's almost like this is the elite. This is the Cadillac of the real estate industry, And, I've been working for a great company for a number of years, but now an opportunity to be at a resort where the ocean is across the street, I can bring customers and say, hey, let's take a walk on the ocean, on the beach. Just a unique situation, and couldn't pass it up.
Yeah. All right, let's go. I created some questions. These are what's trending.
Rapid fire? Do I have a certain number of times?
No, not necessarily. But so for the listeners out here, what I researched, and obviously hopefully we get out of Mike today, is what is everyone asking for? So as far the first group of questions are going to be, what are agents asking for online right now? What's the trending demands and so forth, the things that they're looking up and so forth. So here's the first question. How do you consistently attract and retain high net worth clients in a market as competitive as Ponte Vedra and the Northeast Florida coast?
I think trust. I mean, obviously there's a lot of moving parts to any transaction, and on the ocean even more. This is a high-end property, high-end residential, property. It's all high-end out in Ponte Vedra these days, but the oceanfront especially. And you have to know what you're doing. You're negotiating, contracts are difficult in that high-end range. You'd be amazed that people over $10,000 will walk away from a deal if they don't get what they want.
Right.
Buyers and sellers.
In a multi-million-dollar house, we're about $10,000.
Most buyers and sellers, in some instances, are stubborn in a lot of ways. They both, want to get the best possible deal that they can. And there's a lot of things. You have to be educated on, inspections and, things that go wrong potentially during the due diligence period, how to address them, how to make the buyer feel more comfortable, how to make the seller feel more comfortable. It's really trust. And if you do a good job for somebody and they have a pedigree, previously from a recommendation or from somebody else, they're going to say, yeah, he did a good job for me too. So
I remember when I had Lisa Barton on years ago.
Great agent. Lisa's,
Yeah.
I know quite well. She does a great job.
Yeah, and she's out there in your neck of the woods. And she felt one of the things that was important was to have those contractors on speed dial.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of these buyers are going in and they're looking at this home and goes, well, it's on the beach, but maybe, well, it doesn't matter how old it was. They don't like the kitchen or whatever. To have the ability to get them numbers in a quick fashion by a reputable vendor who may or may come in and give them at least an idea, a range of what do it cost to redo this or redo that or take that wall out, because at the high end you really need to be a concierge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that gets back to what I was saying. You don't have to be knowledgeable like with the coastal stuff, but you have to have those subs, those contractors, those names, those experts in the industry on speed dial, as you said, because they're going to want instant answers. And every buyer, every seller really wants to have as seamless of a transaction as possible. If the realtor can take away some of the worry and concern of all the details and minutia that a buyer and seller is going to have to do during contracting and prior to closing, it makes it so much easier, and they can look back on the transaction and say, that was very easy, this person was great.
All right, question number 2. What advice, this is probably the most popular question. I hear this all the time, and I don't know if there is truly this is the precise answer to this question. What advice do you have for agents looking to break into the luxury market and build credibility when they don't have the big listings right now?
I just think persistence and contacts, nurture the relationships. I mean, everybody knows people has relationships or probably friends that own maybe a high-end property somewhere, whether it's through the Rotary Club or through their tennis game or the garden club or whatever. I mean, everybody has some of those relationships, I think. And, if Susie tells, Joni, oh, my friend Joni's getting ready to list the Oceanfront property, and maybe you should consider this person.
Right.
At least try to get in the door, I mean, you can't penetrate the long-standing relationships that I'm always going to use this person because I've done it for the last 30 years, or I'm going to use her daughter. Try to get into the conversation that, would you be willing to talk to me before you make a decision? And if you can do that, and the answer is yes, I'll be willing to talk to you. Maybe there's something in that meeting that will trigger, you know what? I'm going to give her an opportunity. And I tell you what, breaks, we go back to breaks and songs or actors, they get a break. I have a very good friend of mine. He's one of my best friends. But as far as dealing with oceanfront homes and land, he gave me an opportunity. It's Peter Bragan. Peter's used to own the Jacksonville Suns. Great friend of mine. And I've helped many members of his friends and family. And, it takes that one. He trusted me. We had done a lot of stuff with the Catholic Knights at the ballpark while he was still owner of the Suns, and just got to know him. And he said, yeah, you're in real estate out there, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am. And, so it takes a break, if you get the break from the right person.
But you put yourself in position by being part of that organization, the Catholic Knights or whatever, to actually run into him and meet him and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so I would say that would probably be the final. Put yourself in the vicinity.
And we had a very positive experience with the transaction. So, you deal with people, and if it's a great experience, you're going to remember that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it.
All right. You've been ranked in Jacksonville's Business Journal's top 100 agents for 5 years running. What are your daily habits or systems that drive the level of consistency?
Every January 1, everybody in my office says, okay, how are we going to do it again? Or I had a down year. What am I going to do different this year? So I look at a lot of that stuff, but most of it is nurturing the current relationships I already have, finding out if any of their people, any of their friends need help, any of their family, just staying on top, any sale I've ever made. And I'm not the best about this. Some of them are fantastic, They send out the 1-year anniversary cards, happy birthday, it's been a year since you've been in your new house. That's really not my style,
But that helps.
It helps. But
Yeah.
nurturing the relationships. So a phone call, a text. Hey, what's going on? Let's catch lunch. Let's have some coffee. I see you added a deck in your house, behind the house. It looks great. Just staying engaged, I think, and sort of building. I think, you stay engaged. And fortunately, Tracy, I'm really active. I mean, I play a lot of tennis. I play some golf. I'm involved in a lot of different things. And so I keep seeing a lot of the same people and making new friends,
Yeah.
and that's the key.
Well, everyone's not buying and selling every day. So you may hang out with that person for 2 years before they ever, because now they're ready to do something and now they're going to call on you. It's just, that's the unique thing about our business is it only takes a few deals to make a month great.
Right.
And, it may be someone that you're nurturing or known for a decade before they're like, oh, yeah, I'm ready to buy a new house now, or I'm looking to sell my house and whatever. And that's kind of the excitement of it. It's like a Christmas present when that person calls you that Monday morning. So you know what? We were talking this weekend. We've known each other for 6 years now, playing tennis together. Hey, would you list my house?
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it works. I will say this. What works for me doesn't work for everybody else. I mean, there's other things. I mean, some will, they live by the internet. They'll pay large fees to subscribe to lead services and things like that. They'll do cold calling, like the old days. I don't do any of that. I kind of just think that everybody's different. What works for some will not work for others, and vice versa.
Well, I think for, your involvement in playing golf at the club, you're playing two things you love to do, you enjoy it, and that's the circles that you've created where a lot of people don't have those hobbies to put themselves in front of people. But I think one of the key points you made earlier, to get in the luxury market, you've kind of have to involve yourself into something that hopefully you're going to run into that person that's going to give you that one chance.
Can I say one thing?
Of course you could say.
The other thing that I think helps maybe younger people that are in the industry that are kind of wondering, listen, how do I get jump started? I've been proactive. We went through COVID and everything, got through it, and things were crazy. There was high demand for property, and that's when the off-market properties really kind of took off. And you have to have the initiative, and I did, to reach out to people, whether it's through a note card in the mail. If you happen to know them and know their phone number, you can reach out to them. But and said, listen, do you know what's going on in the market, right? Have you ever thought about selling this piece over here?
Right.
And I have a good relationships with my real estate colleagues around the area in Ponte Vedra, and a lot of times we'd get on the phone and brainstorm and say, hey, listen, I have an off-market property. That's still happening today, by the way. Very active, the off-market property. There's been a lot of my biggest and best sales never hit the market.
Right.
And I think a young person or somebody that's really kind of in a little bit of a rut saying, I don't have much business, what do I do here? They need to really kind of think about picking up the phone or sending a note, eyeballing some property. I mean, I love to drive, so there'll be days when I'm driving around, just kind of looking around, driving around, writing down an address or on my phone. Okay,
right. That's a really sweet property.
202 M Street,
right.
Vacant lot, house falling apart, 503 Maple.
Right.
And it's really worked for me, and I really think people should be proactive because you never know what a situation out there of somebody that wants to sell. You just never know until you ask.
Well, we know people in life procrastinate. And like you said, you go buy a house that doesn't look like it's being taken care of. It's probably somebody who's been procrastinating about selling it and doesn't know what to do with it. And now you might be the suggestion on that call that day.
100%.
Yeah.
Give them a nudge, and you never know what might happen.
Exactly. That's actually very, very priceless advice. How important is patience and calm communication in the luxury real estate, and how do you handle emotionally complex, high-stake transactions?
I try not to get emotional. Probably talk to my wife about that. It's a passionate, real estate is a passion of mine. So, if something goes sideways, you have to really temper your emotions, It's not easy always, especially when you're getting yelled at from somebody on the other line who doesn't see it exactly the same way you do. And calmer heads prevail. I've always learned that in any advice in life. I mean, any situation, let cooler heads prevail. So calm down, take a deep breath, step back and say, let's look at this. Let's take the emotion out of it. That's the first thing. Try to get the seller or the buyer, whoever you're talking to, not get emotional, take the emotion out of it. You're talking about millions of dollars sometimes, or hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's a lot of emotion in there, I mean, that's a big payday or potentially, a loss in a down
Can you
market.
think of a story right now where some things got a little, without
Oh, God.
exposing some
Just
names or
one?
addresses? Okay. If you got a couple, those sell. Facts tell, stories sell. That's my...
Some of them are sadder than others, but, let me think about that for a second. There was a situation years ago with an elderly lady in a condominium out at the beaches, and somehow we found each other, and she wanted me to list her property, and she was going off to get married again, and perhaps had some memory issues. This is not supposed to be funny, but it kind of is, in a comical way, and everything worked out, by the way.
Okay.
And she's checking in with me from time to time, and this was not so much emotion as much as it was just a unique situation. So she said, "Oh, are we still closing this week?" And somehow she got confused with the time. She said, "Okay, I'll have everything done and out of here." We show up to do the walkthrough in the morning of the closing with the other customer, and it's just the place looks like it's ransacked, and she's crying. She's sitting in the pile of all of this stuff, boxes and clothes and furniture, and she says, "I don't know what to do. I lost track of time." And, and that's when the cooler heads have to prevail. The other person was about to go sideways. And we rescheduled everything, and everything worked out.
Yeah.
So, and as far as emotion, yes. Have I been yelled at before over the phone? I'm sure every realtor has.
Right.
And it could be over a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of what was conveyed to a buyer or a seller, as far as a closing time or what they would do, in inspections or how much they would pay.
With these price points of some of these homes, some of these people bought them back and didn't pay very much even, at the time. But obviously as Jacksonville's grown, Ponte Vedra, the price points go up. And now maybe one spouse has passed away, or maybe the parent that both have passed away. The kids are taking over. And now you have these, I would imagine, millions of dollars sometimes on the table that are in, we know the blood is much thicker, or the money is much thicker than the blood, I should say. And have you had one of those situations where it was a problem trying to close an estate where you had to bring 3 or 4 people who are, the kids or whatever who are involved, and bring them together and say, hey, this is what we've got to sell it for, or just working that transaction, because it's not always one-on-one. You might have a group of people who've inherited that house now, and now you're trying to sell it and get an agreement, get everyone to sign the contract and all that.
Yeah,
kind
it
of
happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. I mean, especially in LLCs and estates and trust, and I mean, getting everybody on board, that's their inheritance in a lot of cases. Most of the time you can kind of pull everybody together, and sometimes the attorney is even there to soften the language and get everyone comfortable. But yeah, it happens quite a bit. I'm dealing with one right now on a condominium that has a lawsuit going on with all of its members over with
condo killers
with
lawsuits
with the builder.
Yeah.
And buyer is got all of their money invested into this loan. And of course lenders don't always lend on condos that have litigation.
Yeah.
So she had to go out and find another lending product, and she did. I represent the seller in that one, but there was a concession made by the seller, and I basically told her, I said, listen, the buyer doesn't have any more money to come forward with, and there's going to be some additional closing cost and a higher interest rate, and buyer made a request to ask for some closing costs, and the seller agreed, and everybody's happy now, and we have a closing date.
Yeah.
But you just have to give and take. It's tough. I've probably been yelled at. You talk about emotional transactions. I've probably been yelled at and hung up more by other realtors rather than customers, because they get emotional. Why won't they take this deal? I'm done. But I always have their number. I always have their number to call them back.
What's your advice to the agent on the other line? Because, this is a very common topic, and it's usually brought up by my guest, real estate agent, about some of the agents on the other side that that got to take their emotions out of the situation and understand you have a buyer, you have a seller, and it's the two of you, the two agents, to come to get the agreement together to where they are willing to go to the closing table and they accept the terms eventually and close. But to get hostile and hang up the phone on you.
You're dealing with all types. I mean, all types of personalities. And I'm a pussycat, right? I'm not easy guy to get along with, right? I think so. But anyway, all joking aside. I do have a lot of friends in the industry, and I feel like I can talk to everybody. But at the end of the day, you have to put the real request and the real terms obviously need to be put in writing, and everybody needs to be agreed upon. And all these implied emotions over the phone, and you don't know if it's coming from the seller or the buyer or just an agent that's hostile, So you just have to put it in perspective. I've gotten upset about things, and with people that I'm comfortable talking to that way, that I know real well, why? What's going on? And at the same token, that comes back from the other end as well. But yeah, it's a high stress level industry, and all the pieces have to fall into place. I mean, I like to think that, it's almost like we're defense lawyers, that we're in a courtroom and we constantly have to state our case. Realtors have a little bit of that in them. And most of the time, if you're cordial and respectful, and I respect all my colleagues in the industry, I mean, that I know pretty well, There's some people getting licensed, that are learning on the fly, and those are the ones that you have to watch out for.
Well, the perception is obviously there's quality people like yourself, Lisa Barton, and others out there who are doing great business, have been out there, know the back corners and the alleys and everything out there. But then there's another group of agents that are perceived to be out there, and you can tell me if it's as true or not, or maybe you just want to no comment, but they'll go out and hang their license with some of the offices out there that are near the beach, because they'll go in there and sit desk duty, and hopefully somebody might walk in, and they'll get $1 million, $2 million sale by someone walking in. Is there a lot of agents out, and so they're only doing a handful, if any, deals, but they get that one deal. Hey, they got to hold on to it like
I'm a big fan
it's the end of the world.
Duty, by the way. I mean, floor duty at our resort is good,
Right, I'm sure you get some interesting conversations.
I don't dismiss that, but the people that just sit there and want it to fall in their lap, that have dollar signs in their eyes, there are some young people in the industry that get into the business with those expectations, and you have to work. You've got to learn real estate license law. You don't just take that test and just be done with it after that. I mean, you have to stay on top of it.
Right.
There's ever-changing laws. Obviously with the commission lawsuit that was settled and the changes and the disclosures that we have to make now.
Right.
I mean, you have to stay on top of it. And it's actually something that I love to do. I mean,
but is it really actual? Because you can control that part.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's just you putting in your time, doing your CE, and obviously going your sales meetings, and everybody's kind of talking about those things. But it's the other things that you're doing. Even though you're playing tennis and golf, your collateral benefit of doing those things you enjoy, you're also spending time with people. It was Bobby Brennan. She said her daughter said something. She's having the church conversation because she goes to church, and after church, she hangs around and talks to everybody. So everybody knows Bobby sells real estate. You hang around and you have the conversations, whether it's having a drink or lunch after playing around or whatever it is. That's the difference between you and the agents that you were just kind of gesturing to, is spending the time to actually have meaningful conversations, even though it may be 3 years before you ever get something from them.
Right, that's right. And the young agents, and I don't know, I'm not specifically saying they're young. There are a lot of people that after one career will get into the business new. Right. But the new agents, I should say, you have to have a good broker. You're not going to know everything walking in. You're going to be somewhat green. It's going to be a learning curve. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a good broker. I mean, we've had great brokers at my company. The current broker, Jesse Killebrew, is great. I can go to him anytime. He's always there for us. We've got a good system in place. So you've got to have a good broker that can help the young agent or the agent that is inexperienced.
Right. Well, how important, you've mentioned Ponte Vedra Club Realty several times and how you enjoy it there and the brokers there, but the collaboration between the agents. Because I imagine, when you're dealing with these unique custom homes, you have unique situations come up. We already know real estate transactions, every one of them is different no matter where you're buying. But imagine out there, it's almost at a higher level that you guys are collaborating and sharing your experiences. So when the other agents come upon similar situations, they're already aware of, oh, you know what? I remember so-and-so in the office telling me something. But they're having that collaborative effort.
Yeah, it's a close extended family, really. I mean, we've grown quite a bit. I mean, when I came into PV Club Realty, 25 agents maybe that were really active, probably about 85 now or more. And we have some St. Augustine presence too. That's part of it. But yeah, I mean, for the strong core of top producing agents, we've been around. We've been in this game for a while. We're friends. We're close. We do things socially together on occasion. We try to do mixers where, we try to get together periodically. We have brainstorming sessions. I mean, we all get along. We all have had the same problems. We all confront the same challenges in the market.
Right.
So, it's great to have a core of a good close-knit core like that. Yeah.
All right. These are buyer and seller questions here. Right. What should buyers know before making an offer on an oceanfront or intercoastal property in Ponte Vedra Beach or Volano Beach? Kind of talked about a little bit of this with having a consultant.
Yeah, they've got to do their homework. They're going to get a due diligence period anyway. So there's time if you're in a hot market and if you don't make the offer, you're going to lose the property. Make the offer. Get under contract and have your due diligence period and know that you've got to check out the land. You've got to know where the coastal construction line is.
Insurance.
Insurance, of course. Insurance, thank you. Do you have any challenges? Do you need filled? Is there challenges with the gopher tortoises?
Right.
Is there a bulkhead? I mean, is there problems with erosion? Was this one, had good restoration with the government program? I mean, there's a lot of things.
Even the lots that are not directly on the ocean, that might be on the other side of A1A, what are some of the challenges that they have that you should be aware of?
I mean, same thing. I mean, elevation, even on the west side, you have challenges, Ponte Vedra has not had too many problems, during the bad storms. But, down, you go a little bit further south in Volano, and I hate to be beating up Volano because there's some great things down there. Volano's come back pretty nicely with some good construction, and I think they've really increased the standards, in the building industry down there. But you got a lot of properties between the ocean and the intercoastal that are really low back there that flooded. A lot of houses that flooded during those storms. You see less of that here in Ponte Vedra. The elevation's different for the most part.
For sellers listing luxury homes in 25, what's the biggest mistake you see, and how do you guide your clients to avoid it?
Overpricing. Is that quick enough for you?
Yeah.
We were so spoiled during COVID where we could name the price. And then when we did have a lag in the market, which we're still coming out of, the seller still thought, well, my property hasn't gone down in value. And on the oceanfront, they're probably right. I mean, it has held its value pretty well. It's flattened quite a bit. The market is flattened. You ask $15 million for a property, you're not going to get multiple contracts like you might 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
Or, $10 million even, which is crazy to think that those prices have gotten that. But it may take a while to sell now. But you still have enough property, seekers from all over the country, all over the world, looking at Northeast Florida, oceanfront. So, especially from California. I mentioned New York.
What are some techniques you use? Because a lot of these homes are very unique, right? I mean, if you're talking truly on the oceanfront, they're all different.
Right. I mean, you got some that need work, that are older, that are tired, but it's a great location. But those are the ones that tend to get overpriced. We have the best location in Ponte Vedra. Well, you've got an old house that's going to need $3 million worth of renovation. So you can't price it right here, even though you want to.
Right.
Or I wouldn't recommend it. I can't. There's no can't, right? They can do whatever they want, and sometimes they will get it. But the newer properties, I mean, it's sort of the coastal construction. The light and bright colors. You've got a lot of Cape Cod. The cedar shake is very popular now in new construction on the ocean. So, Yeah, I mean, people are going to look for something, light and bright that feels like a new beach house.
When you're looking at north of, going into multi-million, 1.5 and probably higher, to 15 million or whatever, are they necessarily looking for a turnkey, or do you find a lot of these buyers, a lot of them are paying cash and they have the ability to spend $500,000 renovating
the properties that are lagging on the market are the ones that need work, obviously, that are not moving quickly. And as time goes on, the seller will get more motivated to take less. So you do have those investors that feel like they always have to get a deal, or those buyers that are buying a house and saying, I don't need a turnkey, I want to make it my own.
Right.
I don't necessarily like the bedroom layout of this, even though it's pristine and perfect. It's not my taste exactly.
Right.
So let me buy an old rundown property, either scrape it or renovate it and make it exactly the way I want it.
Right. What are realistic expectations for home values right now in coastal markets like Ponte Vedra and St. Augustine? Are we seeing a stabilization or continued growth?
Continued growth, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go down look around the peninsula of Florida, we're still a bargain. I mean, like I said, time on market is a little higher than it was before, and the price has flattened a little bit, but it's not going down, and I don't think it is going to go down, unless we have some major crisis. But I think by this time next spring, you'll see a little bit more lucrative movement in the market. But the reason being, I mean, go to Jupiter, go to Naples, go to West Palm, go to Boca, go to Sarasota, go to all of these properties or double, in some cases just triple what you were getting on the ocean up here in Ponte Vedra. Unbelievable.
For
Palm Beach, Naples, Alice Beach over in Panhandle, insane prices. We're still a bargain.
Do you guys, because obviously your guys are knee deep in the middle of all this at Ponte Vedra Club Realty. Do you guys market in any way to the California area, knowing that we are getting a lot of those type people coming in, or the Manhattan area?
Some of us do, yes. Yeah. I advertise in the Wall Street Journal for the high-end stuff that we list on occasion. And yes, we will occasionally get those calls that come from either the print version of the newspaper that runs nationally or the website.
Right. You've sold more oceanfront homes and lots over the past decade than any other agent in the region. What trends have you seen in waterfront demand, and where do you see it going?
Those stats are unofficial, but I can just say I've sold a lot.
You're one of the top. We'll call one of the top.
I've sold a lot of them. Repeat the question again, the last part of that, please.
What trends have you seen in waterfront demand, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, obviously it's an upward trend. People are anxious to get into the oceanfront market. Those people that we mentioned, Californians, New Jersey, New York, D.C. You have some coming from internationally. South Florida people are moving up here, believe it or not. So it'll be interesting to see after the recent mayor's election in New York.
Right.
People, some unhappy. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a little bit of a bump from that, like we did with COVID, when people were not happy with their local governments. In California, New York is a great example. No matter what political affiliation you have, people moved out of those states because they weren't happy. So we may say, okay, some that were thinking about retiring to Florida at some point, they decided to do it a little earlier. Let's do it now. So I think it's an upward trend. I think we're going to continue to see growth here because our price point, even though it's rising, when they look around the entire state, they'll have a great comparison and say, you know what, Northeast Florida, pretty nice, and they have climates. They have change of seasons. Florida's hot, South Florida's
sometimes all on the same day.
Yeah, that's right. good point. So anyway,
let's finish with this, because this is a real trending topic for anyone buying real estate in Florida, and that's insurance. Are some of those properties out there right on the beach uninsurable?
I hesitate to use the word uninsurable, but it's the insurance industry on the coastline is tough, and after storms, it gets even tougher. My experience has been I've always been able to get insurance for my customers. Maybe it's because the properties were, not in total disrepair for most cases, but It is tough, and you just have to shop it. Again, it comes back to.
I imagine there's a select group of insurance companies that actually will take them on.
I'm fortunate to have a couple of insurance brokers that I deal with that really will go the extra mile and say, listen, I'm laying this in your court.
Right.
See if you can help them. In most cases, the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. So, it's how much do they want to pay? But it's not exorbitant. Now you have the National Flood Insurance Program that will cover a small amount, for most people. But the high-end oceanfront estates, I imagine the premiums get up there.
Right. DeSantis is working on property taxes. We were talking about the mayor election in New York, which could, Ryan Serhant definitely believes that people are making that move out of New York, and I had a lady on with Coldwell Banker Warguard out of New York last week. We did a remote podcast. We touched on this a little bit, but with DeSantis possibly doing the property tax adjustment for the state, I mean, if something like that, and he's talking. I don't know if I haven't read the total details, but the headlines are like remove property taxes altogether, which I'm like, how can you do that completely? But even just reducing our property taxes, which are respectively lower than a lot of our Northeast or obviously California. Yeah. What do you think that does for Florida real estate?
I need to do a deeper dive into that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think Governor DeSantis has done a fantastic job on a lot of fronts. I'm not so sure about eliminating property taxes or significantly reducing them. I'm not so sure about that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's things out there to help people like homestead. They could increase the homestead or whatever. But removing property taxes, I kind of feel like, okay, are they going to get you in another area? I mean, if they remove the taxes, are you going to pay every time you buy or sell your home? Are you going to pay another exorbitant fee? I mean, there's no state income tax already. So, I mean, if they get rid of real estate taxes,
I'm thinking the only way they could make
generate revenue.
Sales tax is the only other area that I could think where they up the sales tax a couple percent or what. I don't know what it would take to offset.
Right. So I kind of feel like they're going to have to replace that revenue.
Right.
And where is it going to come from? And I'd like to see that plan before I make a judgment on removal.
Well, I mean, I think they still definitely need. We know one of the challenges in St. Johns County is obviously infrastructure and getting the roads done, and they drag their tail sometimes on some of these very small projects, but they need to be done because they're juggernauts. And
absolutely.
Yeah, where's that? The importance of that money, and obviously we need the school because. More population. We are growing here as a region, and new schools are having to be put up, and the cost of that. So, if you remove property tax, I mean, you still got to have some sort of thing in there for the schools and that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I'd like to see more.
Yeah.
So I can discuss it maybe at another time.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously not a re-election promise that he's putting out there just to get votes. So right. I'm real curious where he takes it, and obviously he must have a plan of how. But some of these counties replace that income. But I think what they've also found, there are a handful of counties in the state where their budgets have gotten out of control. Their budgets have gone up exponentially over the last number of years, and obviously they think there's some fraud and not so good things going on. So that investigation is going on. Mike, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so. It's great as we get into fall here, some beautiful weather out there. The company that I work for, the Ponte Vedra Inn and Club, I just encourage people to come in and call us, come by and see what's going on out there. Just take a drive down the boulevard. It's going to be amazing, this transformation when the Inn and Club is completed. It's going to be, 5-star.
Is that your main office or the one in the hotel that you're renovating?
I mean, the main office.
Okay.
The hotel is actually going to stay pretty much the way it looks now. Mm-hmm. But you can see what's going on. They're building new buildings. They're going to have a new beach club, a new surf club. They're going to have enhancements to the lodge down the street a little bit as well. And it's going to be phenomenal, so everybody's excited about it. I think investors in real estate who decide they want to settle here or even have a second home here are really being driven by some of those things that are going on at the Inn and Club, because a lot of them do end up joining the Inn and Club, so it's
was there
times.
new ownership or everything to put this, or is this a project they've been working on that they were going to do this complete makeover?
Long overdue. A lot of people point to Sea Island as a another local southern resort that had somewhat of a facelift a few years ago, and now it's our turn. And Ponte Vedra Club and the gate and the corporation has done a phenomenal job. I've seen the renderings. You can walk in the lobby and see what's going on and some of the renderings of how it's going to look, and it's really kind of an exciting time to be in Ponte Vedra Beach.
Yeah, for sure. Listeners out there, if you could please, if you enjoyed what Mike had to share today, which was priceless information, obviously his contacts will be in the show notes. If you're getting your first listing on the beach, you might want to call Mike and say, hey, what do you know? What some tips you can give you? Share some advice. Maybe one of these consultants he could advise you to, get on the speed dial and to give your buyers or sellers some advice at buying out there. Please like and share. Follow the show. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
This may be it for today's episode of Real Estate Excellence, but we both know your pursuit of excellence doesn't stop here. To connect with the best of the best and really take your skills to the next level, join our community by visiting TracyHayesPodcast.com, where you'll meet more like-minded individuals looking to expand their inner circle and their personal experience. That's available at TracyHayesPodcast.com.